Today we had a wonderful talk on hard problem of consciousness by well-known Swamiji. So consciousness is a hard problem for whom? Not for me, not for you. Because all of our conscious beings. For us, it's a day-to-day life. Right? Consciousness is not a hard problem. Consciousness is our life. For all of us. Consciousness is a hard problem for whom? For scientists, it's a hard problem. Why it's a hard problem? Because science, by definition, by nature, is objective reality, search for objective reality. Objective reality means something I see, I observe, I model it, I experiment on it, and come to some conclusion. Consciousness is not available for objectification in any way, because it's subjective experience, subjective reality. And all of us, myself, you, anybody, has a very clear subjective experience of life. Now, question which scientists that I'll categorize scientists as two types of scientists. One is physicians and other is psychologists or biologists. Physicians, when they're trying to search for the ultimate nature of matter or unified field theory, they're trying to seek something. What is the fundamental reality of nature? Look at our molecules. They come to atom, electrons, protons, subatomic particles, quarks. Beyond that, what? There seems to be nothing. From nothing, everything seems to be emerging. Okay. So the science is at that dead end of their search when they explore into matter. But still, scientists believe there's a unified theory of everything. One theory which can explain everything, or unified field theory. So that's the search. Some fundamental reality. Now, for them, when they try to search for fundamental reality, they end up in nothingness or vacuum. They call it quantum vacuum or whatever is that. From nothingness, everything seems to be emerging. Now, what is it nothing? As per Vedanta, there's nothing called nothing. There is ultimate reality of everything is consciousness. So when you go objectively, that ultimate reality you see as a vacuum, nothingness, emptiness. But it's not emptiness, it's a consciousness. The moment you bring consciousness, the scientific endeavor gets into trouble because consciousness cannot be objectified. The moment you try to objectify, it becomes vacuum, emptiness, nothingness. In that sense, consciousness seems to be defined discovery. When the material scientists try to discover the real nature of matter, they end up in some sort of vacuum, the quantum vacuum from something, everything emerges from vacuum. Now go deep inside, whether psychologist or biologist. We have a body, cells, then at a deeper level, mitochondria, all those living entities are there. And then if you go to the brain, neurons are there. Okay. All these seem to be objective, available for objective verification. Brain, nervous systems, neurons, everything. But somewhere, this objective reality is giving rise to a conscious experience which cannot be modeled. It cannot be modeled. Somewhere that a jump happens at the subjective reality from matter, suddenly it becomes subjective. The transition from matter to subjective, where it happens, we can't understand. How the material experience of a fruit, sweet, fruit, which is about atoms and molecules and electrons, translates into finally a conscious experience of sweetness, the beauty, the color. Where this integration happens, that they are not able to locate. So now that we call as consciousness, which is innermost reality, Everything observable is matter, objective reality. Either we end up in, if you search for consciousness in the external world, or if you search for the reality in the external world, we end up in vacuum. In the inner world, if you search for it, we end up with atoms, molecules, or sorry, neurons, some electrical properties of neurons, some functioning of brains. That's all is a dead end. Then where is the consciousness? So this is where very hard for scientists to define. The moment you define consciousness as a subject, then it goes beyond the, then scientist is no longer scientist. He can be a rishi or he can be a monk. Okay. So on the other hand, consciousness is defined as object, then it's no longer consciousness. Because the objective reality keeps on changing properties, whereas conscious experience, the consciousness, fundamental aware, knowingness is always there. It's not a changing reality. In a sense, no wonder scientists are calling the consciousness is a hard problem. They should study the life of Buddha. Okay. Anybody searches for consciousness will end up his career is gone. His career is finished. Buddha's career, Buddha had a very glorious career. As a possible become an emperor, having a good family, children. He searched for consciousness and he ended up enlightenment. His career is ended. So those who search for career, consciousness, try to understand consciousness, their career will end, but of course end up in a peace. Other than that, you cannot find consciousness as objective reality. Okay. Now, there's always a discussion which happens. Scientists, now modern day, there's a tendency, modern day scientists and spiritual people have to get together. It's a what you call multidisciplinary approach for understanding consciousness. Because modern day, especially in the 20th and 21st century, psychological problems in human beings have exploded. 20th century is considered as a century with the enormous amount of psychological disorders. Even the earlier centuries where life was tough, but psychological problems, mental problems were less in the early century. They have increased in the urbanization, the pressure of living, all those things have increased the psychological issues. So in order to find solution for psychological problems, scientists take care of there's psychologists do counseling, and then they give medicine treatment. But none of them seem to be giving a good solution. Somewhere the limitations are coming. So many corporates today, they make the employees to practice meditation because it makes them, calms their nerves, help them to reduce the stress. And benefits of meditation are understood everywhere. So now the doctors ask the scientists ask the question, where is meditation practice? Meditation practice comes from religion or spirituality. So let us have a dialogue. Okay. So now this dialogue is not meaningful because absolute viewpoint of spirituality is Advaita, non-duality. There's no other. Absolute reality is the only thing. Everything else is appearance. Whereas material world, the material world is real. I have to find a solution in the material world. So where is the gap? These are the two extreme positions. In between these two positions, is there a path? Is there a bridge? The bridge is actually what we call as approach of yoga. Yoga has a model from consciousness to matter. Sankhya has a principles, 24 principles of Sankhya Yoga. From consciousness to matter, it gives a graded, levels. And Shiva Sutra gives a 36 principles from consciousness to matter. So the whole yogic approach treats the consciousness as a spectrum rather than a binary, non-dual or dual. Okay, so a spectrum approach, I would not say it's an absolute reality, but spectrum approach of looking at consciousness as a spectrum rather than either non-dual or dual. So there I say a lot of problems of the world, as some of the solutions can be found. And this they define the 24 principles of Sankhya or 36 principles of what I call as Shiva Sutra, helps a spiritual seeker to go step by step. Gross to subtle causal. In way, it gives a ladder rather than giving a sudden jump. Okay. Same system can also help find solutions for some of the problems, because it's a graded approach rather than a binary approach. That's what I feel. So, for example, I would treat the universe as a consciousness expressed in terms of various forms. Consciousness appears as a various forms. This I would call as a spectrum. When I say spectrum, there's a lower frequency, higher frequency, and highest frequency. Okay. So that is the approach taken typically in yoga, especially in Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga, the stillness of prana. Raja Yoga takes the approach of prana, whereas Vedanta takes the approach of consciousness. The prana has a frequency, vibration, movements. At different degrees of vibration, different degrees of movement, different manifestations are there. These are the different lokas, different experiences. And the moment you take a yogic approach, life, which is especially Raja Yoga approach, you have a modeling of the system at different levels. For example, today what we call as nervous system, in yogic view, it is nothing but an energy flow, nadis, at various levels. There are very good systems, acupressure, okay, or acupuncture, or Reiki, or even Qigong, which work at the energy level. They provide a good amount of healing for the body-mind complex. So possibly, the total understanding of life has to be a yogic view of life, a Vedantic view of life, and modern scientific view of life. This is actually a complete view of life. This will provide a much comprehensive solution for human problems, including diseases, suffering, psychological disorders. The pranic energy, which vibrates certain frequencies and flows through certain channels, can be used for healing the body and the mind complex. So in that way, we have to look at this whole thing as a comprehensive, either Advaita or Dvaita. No, it's a spectrum. We have to look at life as a more of a spectrum. To give a simpler analogy, vapor, water, and ice. The consciousness is like a vapor, all pervading, invisible. Water which flows, then ice, it is frozen. The physical world or material body is more like a frozen material world. And consciousness, prana, is like something which is flowing. And consciousness is some stillness like vapor. So depending on where we are facing problem, what problems we have to address, probably these are three different models we have to approach rather than looking at a life in a more of a binary. I see in many Vedantic teachers, the approach is simply say, who is suffering? Find out who is suffering, then suffering will go. Who is suffering? Yeah, there's no sufferer. But to solve the problems on the physical world, problems in the transaction world, science is required, technology is required. Similarly, yogic approach is also required. This is what my understanding.
So typically, see the experience, like you said, most Vedantic teachers say, you look at the experience and then you will find out that there is no experiencer, and they try to take that path. But the question is how to understand the experience is a graded thing, and how to get closer to that unification of experienced and experiencer through manipulating that experience and get over the experience. Finally, why people are looking at neurosciences? Because they want to ease the pain, either subtle pain, gross pain, or mental pain. They want to ease the pain, and pain is an experience. So they want to understand how to overcome this experience. Yoga, this is seen. Practically, we see that there's a modification of experience as yoga is going from level to level. My question is, from a consciousness point of view, how do we explain this?
The question is not clear.
The question is, how is consciousness being completely aloof, in which everything is happening? If we take that pure Advaita way of consciousness, how consciousness is experiencing, enabling the experience, how it is looking at itself and experiencing this mechanism, how do we explain? In the end, there's only consciousness, there's only existence.
In the beginning, in the end, in the middle, always only consciousness.
Only consciousness.
Huh.
Right? Now, if then there is no change for scope of anything, but there appears to be a change. This appearance, which is coming in as experience, one way is to say it's all Ajnana, just leave it. It is, you know that it is not, we jump. Is there a way, instead of jumping, saying that this particular experience is coming like this because of this kind of perception, or what, this kind of changes that is happening in consciousness or levels of consciousness?
Yeah, that is actually the moment you bring into question for levels, then we are in the domain of yoga.
Exactly. So
Okay.
how that works?
How that works, there are actually very, very question, we'll take it a separate.